Starfield, like lots of other Bethesda games, has optional quest lines for several of the major factions in the universe. There are 4 in total: Ryujin Industries, UC Vanguard, Freestar Rangers, and the Crimson Fleet. I did the Crimson Fleet first, but I want to talk about Ryujin Industries because it's my video and I'll talk about things in whatever order I damn well please. What I want to talk about today is how these quest lines utterly fail to engage you as a player. There's a severe lack of meaningful decision making, interesting characters, or well-written stories to enjoy. Each questline comes with its own host of problems, but they all share these same basic characteristics. Let's find out why. Ryujin Industries is a major tech company based out of Neon. It pains me a little bit to pronounce it that way, but that's how everyone in the game pronounces it, so I'm not going to go against it. Bethesda, if you want to borrow words from their languages, you should learn how to pronounce them. In this questline, you get a job as an operative and commit corporate espionage to further the company's interests. You unlock the questline by overhearing an advertisement that the company is hiring and doing a little job application at a kiosk. I made sure to answer every question as wrong as possible. As far as they're concerned, I'm an uneducated criminal with no job experience and no tech literacy, just like real life, but I still got invited to do an interview. To their credit, the interviewer acknowledged that my answers were terrible and assumed that their algorithm for selecting candidates must be broken. However, I've had a few jobs in my life. I've even held positions where I conducted interviews. I know exactly what kind of answers interviewers are looking for to their questions, so I made sure to give all of the worst answers to her questions. As far as she knows, I'm completely unmotivated, only in it for the paycheck, don't intend to stick around for more than a few months, and I don't even consider myself qualified for the position, just like real life, but she hired me anyway because it's impossible to fail in this game. This questline made me realize just how little Starfield asks from the player. Now believe me, I don't want every game I play to be like Elden Ring and ask their players to figure out how the enemies are coded in order to get through the game, but I do want the games I play to ask for some engagement from me. I want games to ask me to use my head and figure out how to get through the scenarios they put me in. I don't need the NPCs to tell me how to solve the puzzles, Ragnarok, I can figure them out myself. I noticed this during the Ryujin questline in particular because you're being asked to do a lot of illegal activities without being caught. You're asked to exercise discretion and avoid detection while you do things like planting evidence or installing nefarious devices. Yet the actual risk of getting caught doing these things is minimal at best. In the first mission you're given, you're asked to infiltrate a rival company's office, hack into one of their computers, and upload a file to it. Sounds like the setup for a situation where you need to come up with a way to reach that computer to do the job. There could be a few routes of entry. You could persuade the security or the office manager that you're an IT specialist there to do some work and they need to let you in so you can access the computer. Failing that persuasion, you could sneak in from the roof and disguise yourself as an employee by borrowing someone's ID, get the job done and get out, but no. You walk directly into the office completely unquestioned, and as long as you're hidden and you can hack the computer, no questions asked. Do you see how little engagement this is asking from the player? All you need to be able to do is crouch so you're hidden and hack a novice lock. You don't have to use your brain to figure out how to complete this task. You can practically do it on autopilot. It's like Bethesda is afraid to challenge you lest you get frustrated and decide to stop playing. You know, this office is in Neon, the very corrupt city we talked about last time. You'd think that an office in the most corrupt city in the galaxy, which happens to share a building with an office that had a shooting earlier in the week, would have better security measures in place, but no. Some NPCs make passing comments about whether or not you're allowed in there, but no one will bother to question what you're doing there or kick you out. I walked into the back room of a store and planted evidence in their office without anyone telling me I shouldn't be there. I walked right onto a factory floor and installed a device on a ship despite all of the security robots walking around. I needed to convince an important client to work with our company instead of a rival, but instead of needing to persuade them normally, my bosses fed me lines that automatically completed the persuasion. Bethesda! You included a bunch of stealth, hacking, and persuasion systems in this game. It's okay to ask players to use them. It's okay to make these tasks more difficult for players that don't invest in these skills. It's okay to challenge the player. Because if you don't, it gets pretty boring. There was one mission where I needed to borrow a security guard, and in order to get it, I had a few options. I tried to pickpocket it off the chief, but I got caught and got arrested. Since I failed, I couldn't try pickpocketing again, so I stole a security uniform and convinced the chief that I worked for them and I needed to borrow the card. If I had failed, my only option would have been to kill the chief and take the card, racking up a high bounty in the process. This is perfect. It rewards players that have invested points into the skills that help you get the card and punishes the players that fail by forcing them to resort to the least desirable method. It is a little goofy that you can convince the chief, who should know the people that work for them, who just arrested you, that you work there. But hey, that's the point of persuasion at the end of the day. This is a great example of what these missions could look like. Unfortunately, it's the exception, not the rule. Anyway, the point of this questline is that you do a bunch of corporate espionage until you eventually uncover that a rival company has gotten their hands on information about a top secret project Ryujin is working on. This means that someone in the company leaks the information and you're tasked with finding the mole. The questline actually bugged for me at this point and I couldn't complete it. The previous mission would end, but the game wouldn't give me the next one no matter what I did. In other words, least buggy Bethesda game. Starfield is not a bug-free game by any stretch of the imagination, but most of the bugs are pretty low impact, just something to point and laugh at. However, at some point, I took a couple-month break from the game, and during that time, Bethesda made sure to update their game and made it run worse somehow. After my little break, the game would frequently freeze up and the audio would lag horribly for a bit as the game unfroze. At one point, the game froze, then took my entire computer with it and caused a blue screen, which also corrupted the footage I was recording. I used a repair service to recover the footage, which cost me $39. Thanks for that, Todd. Send me an email and let me know where I can bill you for that. How did they introduce a bug like that into the game? It didn't do that before. The questline locking up was really frustrating. This was literally the last thing I wanted to do in this game. I'm talking about things out of order like I said earlier, so at this point I had already beaten the game and completed every other faction questline. This was the last thing I had to do and I couldn't even do it. I resorted to switching over to the character I had started when I was streaming the game who had already made it partway through the questline. I'm going to use some of that stream footage, then switch over to the remaining footage that I recorded on that character, so don't get confused. This is a completely different character and build for this part of the game exclusively. I discovered that my recruiter was the mole that leaked the intel, only to find out that she was actually framed by one of the executives. I confronted the executive with evidence of the framing, and she admitted to doing it, then asked me to go along with it and help her sell the story so she could take over the company. I said fuck it and decided to go along with the plan because hey, this is a corporate espionage story. Why not mix in a little hostile takeover? I killed my recruiter, then infiltrated the headquarters of the rival she was framed for selling intel to. I needed to sneak incriminating evidence onto two executives' computers and steal a prototype they were working on. In order to complete this mission, Ryujin installed Elon's Neuralink implants so that I could manipulate people to do my bidding to help me complete my objectives. Except it sucks and it doesn't work, a lot like Elon's other ventures. They gave me some intel about a way to cause an evacuation to make the stealthing easier, but in order to do it, I needed to manipulate a guard to turn off a giant fan so it wouldn't turn me into video essayist mincemeat seasoned with a touch of orange citrus. This was literally the only way to cause evacuation. I had to use my Neuralink to manipulate the guard. But when I tried, there was a 0% chance of success. Are you kidding? I got brain surgery for an experimental technology for a 0% chance? They could have at least removed my cosmic brain tumor while they were in there, but no! My assumption is that there would have been a higher chance of success at a higher level, but I couldn't use my higher level character, could I? Would have been really nice if I could have. In fact, considering this is a very stealth-heavy mission, there are a lot of reasons it would have been really nice to be able to use my high-level stealth-focused character, but no! Bethesda was too busy breaking every Fallout 4 mod to make sure this questline worked properly. Thanks, Todd! You know, since I'm on the subject of a stealth-based mission where I don't get to use my stealth-based character, I think it's time for me to talk about this game's skills and build progression. You've got 5 skill trees to choose from with various categories of skills, and there's quite a few of them. There's so many that you won't have enough points to invest in everything, and that's a good thing. It means you have to make some decisions about where you're going to invest points and how you want to build your character. Each skill has 4 ranks, and you have to complete a set of objectives related to that skill in order to level it up. For example, each tier of the stealth skill makes it harder for enemies to detect you and makes sneak attacks deal more damage. In order to level it up, you have to pull off sneak attacks on enemies. Additionally, each skill tree is separated into 4 tiers with stronger skills available at the lower tiers of the tree. In order to unlock the stronger skills, you have to invest points into the other skills on the tree. Each tier requires 4 points to be invested somewhere in the tree. So you can put points into the first tier right away, but you'll need to invest 4 points into the first tier to unlock the second tier. Then you need to invest 4 more points to unlock the third tier, but those points can be put anywhere on the tree. It doesn't matter if it's the first or second tier. So there's a pretty clear line of progression here. Foster the skills in the trees that have the skills you want for your build. If you want to be a powerhouse in combat, invest in the combat skill tree. If you want to craft items and build outposts, invest in the science skill tree. When you create your character, you choose 3 skills that your character will have 1 point invested into right away. I mentioned that when I made my character, I chose the stealth, security, and theft skills because I wasn't fond of combat and wanted to build for stealth. Now, if you've played Starfield and try to build a stealth character for yourself, then you know that I made a giant fucking mistake. The problem here is twofold, maybe even threefold if you want to get technical. First, the stealth mechanics in this game are an absolute nightmare. Second, Bethesda doesn't want you to use your skills. And third, I don't think Bethesda intended for anyone to use stealth because there are so many bugs and oversights related to this build path. I don't even know where to start, it's that bad. Well, we were just talking about the skill trees, so let's start there. On the surface, this system makes a lot of sense and should work really well. You have to actually use the skills you want to invest points into before you can level them up, and you have to invest a lot of points in skills that are related to one another to unlock the stronger skills in that category. Makes sense, right? If you want to be a combat master, you need a lot of combat skills. Here's where it falls apart. Let's say I want my character to be really good at stealth, which I did want that, by the way. In order to reach that point, there are two skills that I want to invest points into. Stealth, which makes you harder to detect and lets you deal more damage from stealth, and concealment, which makes you harder to detect and lets you deal more damage from stealth. Stealth is a tier 1 skill, so I can put points into it right away, but concealment is a tier 4 skill, so I need to invest 12 points into the physical skills tree before I can unlock concealment. I can get 4 points from stealth by leveling it up all the way, but what about the other 8 points? Well, that's easy. I'll invest points into skills that are related to stealth, even if they don't directly improve it. Security will let me get better at lockpicking, something I'd be doing a lot from stealth. Theft will let me pickpocket people so I can get things like keys to unlock doors. Persuasion will help me avoid combat, and hell, while we're at it, we can throw some points into the sniper rifle and pistol skills since I'll be using those weapons from stealth to take down enemies in one shot rather than engaging them directly. Okay, great, this is easy. Between these 5 skills, I'll have more than enough points to unlock concealment. None of these skills are in the same tree as concealment, so none of the points I spend on them will help me unlock it. In fact, none of the other skills in the physical skills tree have anything to do with stealth. Again, the intention here is that before you can unlock the really good skills, you have to put points into other related skills, and that makes sense. I didn't put points into a video creation skill to make videos like these. I had to learn video editing, script writing, camera work, lighting, performance, criticism, analysis, and pretentiousness. It's the culmination of a bunch of different skills that lets me do this, and that's what Bethesda was aiming for. On paper, that's really good. But what the fuck does weightlifting have to do with stealth? Or pain tolerance? Or nutrition? Or any of these skills, any of them. I'm not talking about the realism here, I'm talking about the gameplay perspective. Extra carry weight or more healing from food aren't helpful for that build. The problem with these skill trees is that they aren't designed around how a player might want to build their character, they're just categorized by how similar they are. And if a skill didn't fit in any particular category, they seem to have just been shoved somewhere randomly. That's how you end up with concealment as a tier 4 physical ability. Getting really good at squats with all this crouching I'm doing, what can I say? Hacking and stealth go together like your mom and McDonald's. Why are they in completely different trees? It's reasonable to expect that a player building for stealth would also want the ability to hack and lockpick, or pickpockets, or talk their way out of combat. I understand the logic behind putting hacking in the tech skill tree, but in practice it's asinine. There's not a single other tech skill that I want. The 4 points I put into security did not help me unlock anything useful for my build. Hacking is lumped in with a bunch of shipbuilding and ship combat related skills because fuck it, they all have something to do with tech. But a player building for ship combat doesn't need hacking. It's not related to what they're doing. They might want it, sure, but it's not related. I want it, because it is related. But getting it doesn't help me unlock concealment. Bethesda should have lumped together skills that synergize well together, not skills that sound similar on the surface. Hacking doesn't synergize with ship combat, it synergizes with stealth. There is one skill that technically synergizes with stealth that is in the physical skills tree, and it's the martial arts skill. This one lets you deal more damage with melee weapons at the first rank. All of the higher ranks are designed around getting into melee scuffles, such as reflecting damage and disarming opponents, so it doesn't really synergize with stealth since the idea of stealth is to avoid getting into scuffles. But the buffed melee damage at the first rank is really good for hitting enemies with a melee weapon from stealth. When you deal damage from stealth, you get a sneak attack damage bonus. By default, it lets you deal 2 times base damage with a sneak attack. So the ability to do more damage with a melee weapon using the martial arts skill synergizes well with the sneak attack damage bonus. And in order to rank up the concealment skill, when you eventually unlock it, you need to do melee sneak attacks. It makes a lot of sense to buff that damage ahead of unlocking the concealment skill so you can rank it up more easily. So why didn't I unlock martial arts? Well, because I didn't fucking know I would need to do melee sneak attacks. You can't see what you'll need to do in order to rank up skills before you unlock them. Up to the point that I unlocked concealment, I didn't even carry a melee weapon because A, guns exist and there's plentiful ammo for shooting them, and B, stealth in this game is janky as hell and I wouldn't want to risk sneaking up on an enemy. I let out a sigh of frustration when I finally unlocked concealment and found out that I need to do a bunch of melee sneak attacks to rank it up because I knew it was going to be a pain in the ass. So what skills did I put points into so I could unlock concealment? I chose pain tolerance because all you have to do to rank it up is take damage. Here's some nice footage of me intentionally taking damage so I could rank it up. Really highlights how much of a threat damage is in this game. And I chose nutrition because all you need to do is to eat food to rank it up. All that OJ in my inventory really came in handy on this one. I chose 2 skills that were completely unrelated to my build specifically because they were easy to level. And I only knew what I needed to do to level them by quick saving before I unlocked them. I just searched for the skills that would get me the points I needed the most easily. Really good build crafting you've got here, Bethesda. But finally, I unlocked concealment. Now I'm a stealth master like no other. Now it's time to dig into the stealth mechanics. Starfield's stealth system is pretty much the same as every other Bethesda game. When you crouch, you start sneaking and a detection meter appears at the top of your screen. It will tell you if you're hidden, if enemies are searching for you or beginning to notice you, or if you've been detected. The color of the bar tells you whether you're being noticed by an enemy or a friendly NPC. First, let's take a look at how long it takes for enemies to detect you when you first start the game.
Hey.
It doesn't take long, but that's a good thing. It incentivizes the players that want to get good at stealth to unlock the stealth skills by making it hard to avoid getting caught. Okay, now let's look at what happens when you level up stealth all the way, before unlocking concealment.
Wait.
Okay, that's still pretty fast. It's supposed to be 100% harder for enemies to detect me, but I don't see a huge difference. Maybe it's just so quick that it's hard to notice. Let's look at the maximum stealth capabilities when you have stealth and concealment fully leveled. Wait, that's it? That's what I get for maximizing my stealth skills? I invested 1/5 of my skill points into useless skills so I can unlock concealment and it makes that little of a difference? You know what's worse than that? I lied to you! All of these clips are fully leveled stealth and concealment. This is what endgame stealth looks like in Starfield. Here's a real clip from the beginning of the game before I put any points into stealth and there's barely any difference. I feel like this is a response to all of the must have been the wind memes over the years. It's like Bethesda said, fine, fuck it. Every enemy NPC now has an internal bullshit radar and can smell you a mile away. It's a nightmare to actually achieve anything without getting noticed in this game. Like, take a look at this clip here and tell me what I did wrong. At this point in the game, I had stealth maxed out and concealment to level 3. I walked through a door and immediately got noticed. I used a star power to see where all the enemies are and you can see that none of them are even close to me. There's a railing between me and anyone that could see me, yet somehow it took exactly 1 second and 16 frames for them to notice me. How on earth was I supposed to sneak past any of them when they all have perfect vision and observation hotkey? How was I supposed to react and back out of the room if they noticed me that quickly? You can't even tell who's noticing you, so how should I know who to avoid being seen by? And this is assuming that having enough time to react would even do any good, considering the game just lies to you sometimes. On a frequent basis, the little detection bar would tell me I haven't been caught yet while I was being actively shot at. Again, let's take a look at a clip and you all can try to explain what I did wrong. Once again, we're at maximum stealth and concealment here. I blew up a turret which alerted the enemies, but they didn't know where I was yet. I tried to shoot an enemy with a silenced pistol but missed, and all of a sudden, every enemy knows my exact location. Despite the fact that it was a silenced gun, I'm crouching, haven't been detected yet, and I'm fucking invisible. And boy, don't even get me started on the invisibility thing. At level 3 concealment, you gain the ability to turn invisible if you're standing still and crouching. The Mantis spacesuit from earlier also gives you this ability. There's also a star power that lets you turn invisible for a bit, even if you're moving. But man, invisibility is ridiculously underpowered. Here's a nice clip of me getting noticed despite being invisible and doing absolutely nothing. This is what I mean when I said that Bethesda didn't intend for anyone to use stealth. This isn't finished. Nothing works the way it should. It's all half-baked and broken. Here's a great example. The starborn power that lets you turn invisible is called Void Form, and I use it a lot after unlocking it. It's the most reliable way to avoid getting noticed while trying to stealth, and you can pull off some pretty great maneuvers while using it. But there are a couple of really annoying things about it. For one thing, if you try to open a door with Void Form engaged, you become visible again. I don't know why, it seems really unnecessary. You also can't use Void Form to get away with stealing things because friendly NPCs can see you no matter what for some reason. But that's not even the worst aspect. If you're crouching and already invisible thanks to the mantis suit or concealment and you try to use void form right before you start moving to take out enemies, the two invisibilities will cancel each other out and you'll be completely visible. Why? Did they not think that players using concealment would also want to use void form? How did an oversight like this make it into the game? Did Bethesda test this game at all to see if you can even create a functional build? Or did they just throw together a bunch of random abilities and hope it worked out? They didn't even bother to make sure that the melee attack animation would play when you melee enemies. Did they just think no one was actually going to do this? This is a situation where it feels like Bethesda included something because they felt like they were supposed to, like what I talked about last time with the traits. Starfield is marketed as an RPG, and Bethesda knows that RPGs let you build a character with unique abilities so you can play a certain role. You can build a soldier, or a scientist, or a hacker. But Bethesda only designed the game to be played one way. Stealth is broken because they didn't want you to play that way. They wanted you to get in a firefight in every dungeon. They included stealth kills because they were supposed to, but they put no effort into making sure they were functional or even fun to use. They put all the skills in different trees to de-incentivize using them. Bethesda didn't want or intend for you to create a stealth build. Still not convinced? Then how about this? You can't buy silencers. You have the ability to modify your guns in Starfield. You can add a muzzle brake or an extended magazine or attach a silencer to create a silenced weapon. But you can't buy gun parts anywhere. Nobody sells them. So the only way to add silencers to your weapons is to craft them. You can collect various resources to craft modifications, and there are some modifications that any character can craft at any level. Silencers, however, can't be crafted right away. You have to put a point into the weapon crafting skill to unlock silencers. Weapon crafting, which is a tier 2 science skill. You have to dump 4 points into the science tree before you even have the luxury of crafting silencers, an essential part of stealth builds that you can't buy anywhere in the game. Why not? This is an advanced futuristic society that can easily cross light years. There's a gun store in every settlement, sometimes more than one, and no one sells silencers? I never unlocked the ability to craft silencers because I had no use for any of the tier 1 science skills, and I didn't want to waste more points than I already had to. So for the entire game, I had to rely on random dice rolls to drop guns that already had silencers for me to use. It feels like Bethesda intentionally designed it this way to force players to use unsilenced weapons and forego stealth entirely. I ended up using unsilenced guns quite a bit throughout the game because from a certain distance, you can keep getting sneak attacks even after enemies hear you shooting. At least that part of the detection makes sense. All of this builds into a broader problem with the design of the game, and it's that Bethesda doesn't want you to use your skills. They don't want you to create a build that has strengths and weaknesses that will create a unique gameplay experience. They want everyone to experience the game the same way. When I built my character, I invested a lot of points into security, which let me hack higher level locks. Don't get confused by that phrasing. Hacking and lockpicking are the same thing in this game, and this felt like it was going to be a very useful skill. I was expecting to be able to use it to skip collecting keys, or to skip sections of dungeons, or avoid needing to find passwords for computers. But it didn't work that way, because anytime lockpicking or hacking might be a useful ability, Bethesda made sure there was a lock that can't be picked, or a computer that can't be hacked in the way. I have the ability to hack master level locks, yet I still need to pay 5,000 credits to get into the VIP room of this club because they have the most secure lock in the galaxy on their door apparently. I needed to get a key to break into a vault to collect an item for this mission, yet I can't pickpocket the key off the person guarding the vault, nor can I pickpocket off the person whose lockbox I'm trying to get into. I can't hack the door to let me in either, and why? Because Bethesda only wanted you to play through this section one way. You have to convince the person to give you the key to unlock their priceless heirloom because they secretly wanted you to steal it anyway.
If the award goes missing, there's no need for the insurance company to get involved.
What's the point of giving me all these abilities if you're going to turn them off whenever it's inconvenient for me to have them? Just don't give them to me at that point. If you wanted to create an action-adventure game where everyone would have the same experience, then just do it. Don't waste my time by pretending this is some immersive, open-ended role-playing game. I'm not stupid. I mean, I am, but I'm not that stupid. In the game The Witness, you solve puzzles by drawing a line from one spot to another, and because of the game's mechanics, there is often more than one possible solution to the puzzles. Imagine if, instead of every solution working, there was only one solution that the developer wanted you to use. So you could enter a solution that should work, but it wouldn't let you pass because you didn't choose a specific one the game wanted. That's what this feels like. There's nothing more disappointing in a game than thinking you have the solution to a challenge, only to discover it won't work because the developer wanted you to solve it a different way. If you wanted me to solve it a certain way, then don't give me the tools to solve it my own way. Or I don't know, come up with a reasonable explanation for why my tools won't work here. "Sorry, Mr. Master Lockpicker, this basic door lock is too strong for you, doesn't work." So what benefit was there to fully leveling security? Well, it's pretty much just for looting. I can hack and lockpick boxes that have loot, that's about it. And man, this hacking minigame sucks. Don't get me wrong, hacking minigames pretty much universally suck. BioShock, you can burn in hell for that stupid pipe minigame, but wow, this one's awful. It's a very simple puzzle where you find the right configuration of pieces to fill in all the gaps in the lock rings, and once you do, it unlocks. But it takes way too long to do, especially when you get into master and expert locks. The puzzle is fun maybe one time, but it's not fun the 50th time you do it. And I don't want to stop and solve the same puzzle for up to 2 minutes every time I want to lockpick. It's just annoying, especially when the reward often isn't worth it. It's a total crapshoot if it will even be worth the time it takes. Ideally, novice locks would go in front of low value rewards and master locks would go in front of high value rewards to reward you for solving a difficult puzzle and investing so many skill points in security. But in reality, it's just totally random. Here, I spent a bunch of time figuring out an expert lock, and what's inside? Protein bars and beer. Yeah, that was really worth my time. At least stick some OJ in there, come on. Sometimes you find these display cases with spacesuits inside, and sometimes they're locked, but for some reason, an absurd number of them have a master lock when there's just a deep mining spacesuit inside. For reference, this is the spacesuit you start the game with. It's literally the first one you get. But for some reason, they're so rare and so valuable that everyone in the galaxy keeps one of these things behind a master lock. You remember that collector from last time? He has a room dedicated to all the rare and valuable items he's collected. And for some reason, he's got a deep mining spacesuit in a display case. Why? It got so bad that towards the latter half of my playthrough, I just stopped picking locks for the most part. After I got into that expert lock before, I noticed a master locked safe behind it and decided I just didn't want to waste my time. There wasn't going to be anything worth much in there. The really annoying thing about lockpicking in Starfield, besides how long it takes, is that it practically punishes you for leveling up that skill. Your only reward for leveling it up is that lockpicking gets more difficult and less worth it. If Bethesda designed a mission around you needing to lockpick, it's always going to be a novice lock so that any player can do it. Instead of catering to multiple playstyles, they designed it to be played one way and one way only. The lockpicking in Skyrim was simple, and that was the beauty of it. You could pick a lock in 2 seconds if you got it right the first time. Harder locks could be attempted by anyone, and leveling the lockpicking skill made picking higher level locks progressively easier. It was rewarding and fun to foster and use that skill. They still made it so you couldn't pick lots of doors, and I would criticize it there too, but it was less prevalent than it is in Starfield. I know I said I wouldn't compare Starfield to Skyrim, but it's just way too relevant here. When you choose skills in a game like this, it should be rewarding and it should feel good to get to use those skills. You should end up feeling glad you chose the skills you did, or wish you had certain skills when they would be useful. But in Starfield, the skills you choose are entirely superfluous. You will never have an edge over other builds because you chose certain skills, because Bethesda will just turn them off when it's inconvenient. At its worst, you're basically punished for leveling certain skills. Of all the skills I chose in this game, the only exception to the problem was Persuasion. Persuasion is the gold standard of what skills should look like in this game. Persuasion allows you to completely circumvent some objectives, or completely change how situations play out. It has the potential to radically change your experience with Starfield, and that's what skills should do in a game like this. I absolutely want to give Bethesda credit for how good the Persuasion skill is, even if the minigame isn't very fun. But I'm still going to criticize the game for the vast number of skills that do not live up to the standard Persuasion sets. The skills and build progression are just an absolute joke. It's apparent to me that Bethesda designed Starfield to be played by one type of build, then implemented a bunch of barely finished additional builds that just put you at a disadvantage. No wonder there's an entire tree dedicated to combat alone. No wonder half the star powers are combat oriented. You're supposed to build into combat and go in guns blazing every chance you get. Any other approach is wrong and you're an idiot for trying. So before I went on this tangent, I snuck into a rival company's headquarters to plant evidence and steal their prototype with my special Neuralink implant that doesn't work on half the people I try it on. This was a pretty difficult mission all told, mostly because it relied on Starfield's broken stealth system, but also because I didn't have my high-level stealth character to work with. Although after everything I just went through, I think you can surmise that it wouldn't have made much of a difference. After you complete the job, you sit in on a board meeting where you help to decide the future of the company, even though you aren't a board member and there's no real reason for you to be there other than that you're the main character and you need to be involved in everything all the time. Before the meeting, you can use the Neuralink to coerce all the board members to side with your vision for the future of the company, which I grossly abused. By the time I was done, the old CEO was kicked out and the executive I worked for was the new CEO. We purchased the rival company I just snuck into, and we are moving forward with developing the Neuralink with reckless abandon. All in all, this questline is pretty bad. None of the characters are interesting, and I didn't care about any of them by the end of it, and we already talked about how little engagement most of the missions ask from you. I do appreciate how much impact your choices have in this one. As a result of my decisions, my recruiter ended up dead, and we executed a hostile takeover of the company. The only problem is that those decisions have no impact on how the questline plays out. If you decide to side with your recruiter and expose the executive's plans, you work with the head of security to incriminate her by doing everything she asks. Like all the things you would do if you just decided to go along with her plans. And the recruiter won't have any meaningful role in future events because Bethesda doesn't know if she'll still be alive or not. So your choices only really take effect at the very end of the questline because how things turn out from there won't affect anything. So ultimately, as impactful as your choices appear to be on the surface, they're more false choices. The choice to side with the recruiter or not doesn't change how events play out, neither does her being alive or not change anything. If she's not going to do anything after the time she could have died, then what's the real difference between her living or dying? If the recruiter was a character that I cared about, whose fate mattered to me, or if she was a companion that I could have a deeper relationship with if she lived, then her potential death could be a big deal. But she's basically a cardboard cutout after the point that you decide her fate, so it doesn't matter at all. The effective result is the same. She either dies and exits the story, or she lives and exits the story. All of your interactions with her throughout the questline are purely business oriented. You never get to know her as a person or get attached to her. I don't care about her, and her death doesn't change anything. So the one really big decision you make in this questline, the only decision with actual consequences, is not that much of a decision. The last thing I'll mention is that at the end of the questline, you get to keep the Neuralink, which surprised me. This thing lets you control people and coerce them to your side of things in dialogue. I thought for sure you would lose it at the end of the day. Since this is literally the last thing I did in my playthrough, I don't know if having this thing lets you change how things play out in other parts of the game. I doubt it does, because that would mean Bethesda would have to account for something that only a percentage of players are going to have. But again, I don't know, so I'll just say that it certainly does exist. I will now use my Neuralink to coerce you to like the video. Go ahead. Press the button. You know you want to. Next up, we have the Crimson Fleet questline. This was the first one I did because I was so curious about it after the bafflingly stupid way it starts. To recap, the UC System Defense Commander wants me to go undercover with the most prolific pirate crew in the galaxy after I committed one crime with a fine of approximately $10. Actually, you know what? I wrote that line, then thought to myself, oh, that's pure conjecture. I should figure out how much a credit is actually worth. At CJ's, a convenience store in New Atlantis, you can buy a 4.2 ounce carton of milk for 66 credits. I found an article which details milk prices across the United States from June of 2023. It's based on surveys of more than 4,000 grocery stores, so I believe it's pretty accurate. I'm from Oregon, and this is roughly what I would pay for a gallon of milk. Milk costs $5.98 per gallon in Hawaii, the most expensive in the nation. We're going to use this figure because I'm being very charitable to Starfield. There are 128 fluid ounces in a gallon of milk, so if 1 gallon costs $5.98, then 1 ounce of milk is worth approximately $0.0467. Keep in mind we're rounding numbers to keep it simple here. That means a 4.2 ounce carton would cost around $0.196, not accounting for packaging costs because I'm too lazy to deal with that. So if a carton of milk is worth 66 credits, then 66 credits is equal to $0.196. Now this does assume that milk is worth the same in Starfield as it is in the real world, and I am making that assumption because 66 credits is a very small amount. That means milk supply and demand are still quite high in Starfield. Milk is slightly more expensive in the Freestar Collective at 73 credits. I guess they don't have as many cows. Actually, this creates a lot of questions about milk in Starfield. Did we bring cows to space? Does every planet have cows? Did we introduce them into a bunch of foreign ecosystems with reckless abandon despite our history of discovering how bad of an idea that is? I've never seen a cow in the game. Are they hiding them somewhere? Are there secret cows in Starfield? Are cows a coveted livestock that are bought and traded on some illegal black market? I need answers, Bethesda! You know what? That's not the point. I've already put more thought into milk economics than Bethesda put into the economy of their entire galaxy. So if 66 credits is equal to $0.196, then 1 credit is equal to 336.74 credits. That means the bounty I got for the first crime I ever committed, 500 credits, is worth $1.49. I'm being blackmailed into going undercover with the most notorious pirates in the galaxy over $1.50. Actually, this leads into a bigger point about Starfield's messed up economy. Remember last time when I joked about my wanted traits bounty being worth as much as a child's pocket change? I thought I was being hyperbolic when I said that, and I expected to get comments from butthurt Bethesda meat riders over that exaggeration. But it turns out my 3,000 credit bounty is only worth $8.91. I was right! A child could easily have $10 in their Lightning McQueen Velcro wallet after a visit from Grandpa. That vendor who always starts with 5,000 credits? They must have fallen on hard times. That's only $14.85. I mean, maybe milk is way more expensive in this universe than I expected, but I very much doubt that considering water barely costs less. Butter, produce, even bread cost similarly low amounts of credits. Ramen is slightly more expensive, so I doubt I'm on the wrong track here. Every time I would have the option to pay somebody in the game, whether it be a bribe or because they're selling information, there's always an option to talk them down to a lower price, but in the back of my head, I always question why I would even bother. Nobody will ask you for a substantial amount of money. The highest cost I saw was 10,000 credits. That's a little under $30. And you might be thinking, well, it's not really about the real world value, it's about how much it's worth to your character, how much of an impact it is on their wallet. And you're absolutely right about that. But even in the context of how much money you have in game, $30 feels like an appropriate estimate. I hit 100,000 credits barely 10 hours into the game. I had nearly 1 million by the end of my playthrough. Money became completely worthless to me very quickly because I just had way more money than anything was worth. So when someone asks me for 4,000 credits for information, they're not asking me for an amount of money I will even notice. Persuading them down to just 1,000 credits barely makes a difference. This is a problem that most Bethesda games have. It takes like 5 hours of playtime before money just stops mattering because you have so much of it. Especially if you decide to learn the crafting skills. My lord, the amount of money you can make selling high-level crafting items, it would make Jeffy B shudder. Actually, it wouldn't. He's that much more wealthy than even my Skyrim character. A well-tuned in-game economy is one where you feel the need to make purchases. The developers need to give you a reason to buy things, but you never have so much money that you can just buy anything with reckless abandon. If you're prompted to spend money to get information or bribe someone or buy a necessary item, it should make you stop and consider if you're willing to spend that money. It should have an impact and leave you considering your options. In Starfield, I didn't buy anything besides lockpicks and ammo, and they cost so little that I never paused to consider if I wanted to spend that much money. I bought one ship when my Mantis ship couldn't jump far enough to complete a mission, and even buying a ship was a small expense in the grand scheme of my wealth. Upgrading my ship too, not a big deal at all. It barely made a dent. Thank you for coming to my milk TED Talk. Now, before I started talking about milk, I was getting blackmailed over $1.50. And I do mean blackmailed. You have the option to decline the commander, props for giving me that option, but if you do, he threatens to raise your bounty and keep you in lockup longer than you deserve. You know, this is really a new level of brilliant. This commander wants to coerce and blackmail me into doing undercover work for him, and somehow he thinks I'm not gonna betray his ass! As soon as this questline began, I knew two things. I knew there was going to be an option to side with the Crimson Fleet, and I knew I was going to choose that option purely out of spite. Spite towards the commander for his extremely unethical actions, and spite towards Constellation. Sarah made it pretty clear to me that being a member of Constellation was a high honor. She told me committing a certain crimes was not against the rules, but I wanted to really push her limits for forcing me to join their voluntary group. I wanted to see how the story would handle me becoming a big-time pirate. The commander explained to me that I'd be expected to follow their code of conduct and ethics, i.e. no committing too many crimes while becoming a pirate. I elected to ignore that and immediately got somebody killed in my first mission. This action did not lead to the plan getting called off or me getting in any kind of trouble, so I guess it was less of an expectation and more of a suggestion. I joined up with the Crimson Fleet and immediately went on a mission with the captain to help them with their super important plans, because what is caution around brand new members? During this mission, we're looking for evidence that will lead to a massive amount of credits that the founder of the Crimson Fleet, Crix, discovered but never managed to recover while he was alive. It's known as Crix's legacy, and it's the centerpiece of this entire questline. You help the Crimson Fleet find Crix's legacy while feeding UC Sysdef info about their movements. I got paired up with another rookie until we got separated from the main group. The rookie then talked to me about how we have a golden opportunity to kill the captain and secure a higher position for ourselves in the fleet. Now this is a cool concept on paper, which is probably why it made it into the game, because Bethesda doesn't delve much deeper than that, but in practice, I have no connection to the captain. I literally just met the guy. I don't know the rookie I'm dealing with either. I've barely even gotten to know the Crimson Fleet as an organization. Wouldn't asking me if I want to betray the captain work better once I actually got attached to him and actually started caring about him? Wouldn't it make more sense to ask this question when I have more stakes in the matter, after I understand whether or not the captain is a good leader, or if it's worth it for me to betray him? Well, all of that assumes that this is actually a real choice, and you know that it isn't. Once the opportunity presents itself, the rookie chickens out and I had no option to carry out the plan myself. I think the only purpose of the situation was to characterize the rookie, because I then had to weigh in on whether or not he gets to become a full member of the fleet. You know, me, the guy who literally joined yesterday. My opinion is so valuable to the captain that it decides the rookie's fate. You actually make decisions like this a lot throughout this questline. There are a few characters that will either join the Crimson Fleet or get kicked out based on your decisions. And I don't really know why Bethesda lets you do this. What is the actual impact of these decisions? Whether or not the rookie joins the crew doesn't change how the questline plays out. The only impact of this decision is that he'll show up to help you fight during the last mission, as if you really need the help. It's frustrating because Bethesda had the opportunity to do something really cool here. Remember, this is the same character that wanted to betray the captain. What if keeping him alive and allowing him to join the Crimson Fleet led to him betraying us in the long run and making the search for Crix's legacy way more difficult? Hell, what if he killed the captain the first chance he got, and it was left to the remaining crew to figure out what to do and how to get back at this traitor? Those are interesting, substantial ramifications for your choices. If you were on Sistef's side, your decision to let him join could help your goal by sowing the seeds of betrayal in the crew. If you were on the Crimson Fleet's side, you could protect the interests of the crew by making sure this guy doesn't stick around. Instead, the only impact of this decision is that he can become a companion if you let him join the crew. I mean, I don't use companions, so this wasn't a result that had any effect on me, but just because it doesn't affect me doesn't mean I shouldn't praise it for having actual ramifications. So thank you, Bethesda. Thank you for implementing the easiest and least interesting possible result of this choice. Good work. The same can be said for every other character who sticks around or not based on your decisions. The only impact of your choices is that they show up to help you out during the final mission. It's actually kind of insulting. Does Bethesda really think I'm this stupid? That I'll see them waving the people I interacted with around and think to myself, wow, my choices really made a difference. I feel so involved in this story. No, I didn't care about these characters because Bethesda did nothing to make me care about them. And seeing them one time at the very end of the questline doesn't make me feel like I've had any control over how this plays out. I know they're trying to trick me. It's not hard to see through the ruse. Anyway, back to the first mission. Crix left an audio log detailing his prison escape plans and information about where to find Crix's legacy. Prison escapees often leave audio logs about all of their plans. This is normal behavior. Todd Howard is a real human being. The rest of the questline involves working with the Crimson Fleet to find a lost ship full of credits while telling Sistef about all their movements. The thing I find very irritating is that you have no choice about whether or not to feed information to Sistef. Like I said, I decided at the very beginning of the questline that I was going to betray Sistef and side with the Crimson Fleet, so I had no intention of giving them any information. But it turns out I didn't have a choice in the matter. Every few missions, you have to go and visit them and fill them in whether you like it or not. You do have the option to lie here and there, and I took that option at every chance, but you can't lie about anything important because, that might actually change future events, and that's really hard to account for, so let's just not do it. This is actually anti-role-playing. If you want to roleplay as a character that likes doing crime and is fully committed to the Crimson Fleet, no, you aren't! You're an informant helping Sistef until Bethesda says you're allowed to quit. While I was doing research for this part of the video, I actually found out that I was wrong. It is possible to join the Crimson Fleet without being an informant for Sistef, but once you agree to be an informant, you are locked into that decision until the end of the questline, which is really stupid. I agreed to do the job because I planned to betray them from the get-go, and it sucks that I don't have that option. Once again, I'm left imagining a much more interesting questline than what I got. One where I could join the Crimson Fleet as an informant and immediately tell the captain about the commander's plan. I could then work as a double agent, giving Sistef false information about the Crimson Fleet's movements while telling the Crimson Fleet about Sistef's plans. And actually, that leads me to something else that bothered me. No one in the Crimson Fleet ever finds out you're an informant. That could be a really interesting, really tense part of the questline where you have to talk your way out and convince them that you're on their side. It could be a super suspenseful encounter where if you fail to persuade them, you have to shoot your way out and work with Sistef to take them down a different way. I found it really confusing that there wasn't an encounter like that. It seems like an obvious part of any undercover informant story, but now I know why. Some players will join the Crimson Fleet without being a Sistef informant in the first place, so Bethesda needed to make sure that the story didn't rely on you being an informant. God forbid, some players have a unique and interesting experience. Let's make sure everyone does the exact same things. It actually made me realize how little being an informant affected the story at all. I would check in with them periodically, but I never needed to carry out any tasks for them that would sabotage the Crimson Fleet's plans. In fact, after finding out that the Crimson Fleet is searching for Crix's legacy, Sistef doesn't try to stop them. They want you to find Crix's legacy and give it to Sistef. I thought this was ridiculous, but now I know why. Again, some players won't be informants at all, so everyone has to find Crix's legacy just in case. It's actually insane how much mental gymnastics this dog shit writing requires to ensure that every player does the exact same thing. The more I research the various ways that a player can experience Starfield, the more I learn that there's only one way to experience Starfield. It's just dressed up as a dozen ways with minor, unimpactful changes. Bethesda put out these little promotional videos before the game came out where the Starfield staff sat down and talked about their design philosophy when they were making the game. It's fascinating to watch this because they're clever with their language. They know all the right things to say. Bethesda themselves agree with me that players want a unique experience where every playthrough is a new experience.
My experience is going to be different than yours. I'm going to come in and tell you a funny story about something that happened to me. You may never have seen that because just a confluence of events. And I think that helps with the longevity and it helps with that feeling of community in a lot of ways.
But the reality of Starfield is completely different. It leaves us with two options, really. Bethesda knows what people want, and they themselves are telling us they're creating that experience. But when you dig into it, it couldn't be less true. Every player is not going to have a unique experience with this game. They're going to have the exact same experience as everyone else with only minor differences. So either Bethesda is too incompetent to actually create the experience that they want to create, or the much less charitable interpretation is that they are intentionally misleading their players into thinking they're getting that experience through the extraordinarily minor differences you see. Look, you can betray the recruiter. Look, see, customer number 69. Look how much of an impact you had on that story. You're so cool and strong. Look at you making all those big decisions. Does that decision change anything about how the story plays out? No, but forget that. The recruiter is dead and you did that. Look at you, customer number 69. You're the best. I don't know what I believe personally, but either way, it's crazy how much Todd can say one thing while giving you something else entirely.
Have you ever wondered what I'm doing in the months between uploads? Well, if you are a Patreon member, you would know. Patreon subscribers get weekly updates, early access to new videos, behind-the-scenes streams, special written reviews, and more for the low price of just $5 a month. Joining the Patreon is the best way to support the channel, and it allows me to do a lot of things that make my videos better. So come on by if you want to take a peek behind the curtain. If you can't afford the Patreon but still want to support the channel, hitting the like button really does go a long way to showing YouTube that people want to see this stuff, so I appreciate that too. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the video.
So to skip to the interesting part, I found the location of Crix's legacy with the help of the Crimson Fleet. They send me, and me alone, to go collect it because I am the main character after all. I found Crix dead in front of the console. Turns out he actually did find what he was looking for, but he was betrayed and abandoned here with no way out. I know this because he decided to record all this information on audio logs for some reason. He also recorded how to collect the credits, which takes a really long time. Like a really long time. How long is this gonna take? Turns out this mission can bug, causing the transfer process to last forever, but I waited a very long time before looking up if it was bugged, and I think it says a lot about what I think about this game that it took so long for me to think something was wrong. After collecting the credits, you can either take them to the Crimson Fleet or SysDef. I, of course, chose the Crimson Fleet, which led to a big space battle with SysDef. The ship combat in this game sucks, but to be fair to Bethesda, most space combat in most games suck. Yes, I really mean that. I don't find this slow form of combat where you spend more time trying to face your enemy than actually shooting at them engaging. After you do spot them, you just mindlessly shoot at them without having to focus on aiming at anything in particular. The ship doesn't feel very good to maneuver, it feels very sluggish. Now to throw Bethesda another bone, I was playing on keyboard and mouse, and I'm willing to bet it would have been better on controller. I find that vehicle-based combat generally feels better on a controller in most games, but especially when it comes to maneuvering a spaceship. You have better control over maneuvering the ship compared to the weird system where you drag the nose of your ship around. But I wasn't going to switch the controller specifically for ship combat, so I just suffered. I found that spaceship combat feels much snappier, more responsive, and just more fun in a 6-degree movement system like what you see in games like Everspace 2. But I'm willing to admit that this kind of thing just doesn't vibe with me, rather than it being an issue with the game's design. Someone more into this kind of thing can let me know in the comments if this is good compared to its contemporaries or not. In any case, I just avoided ship combat whenever possible. One thing I found very frustrating was that you can't run from ship combat, even though your enemies can. If you enter ship combat, you're locked out of grab jumping or landing on planets, and I really hated that. It's also really annoying how after you've destroyed the enemy's ship, you have to fly back to their ship in order to loot it. This is fine on its own, but the game makes no differentiation between ships you have and haven't looted. So have fun spending 30 seconds flying over to your ship only to discover you already looted it. I just stopped looting ships at some point because there was rarely anything worth looting anyway. After the ship battle, I boarded the SysDef mothership and killed everybody before finally taking revenge on the commander by taking him prisoner. We then stole their ship, so we obliterated SysDef. We pretty much destroyed an entire branch of the United Colonies Navy. Sounds like the kind of thing that would have major ramifications, right? Oh, this resolution kind of broke my brain. For starters, you don't get a bounty for this. As a result of my actions, SysDef was annihilated and I handed the Crimson Fleet a massive sum of credits that they can use to expand their operations. Those are serious crimes that I've committed. That's like life sentence type shit. I was acting as an informant. They must have a file all about me. Yet I get away with doing this completely scot-free. This is a problem with writing scenarios where your character has a massive impact on the world around them without writing ramifications for those events. I should be like top 10 most wanted people in the galaxy right behind the captain. But no, they don't even slap me with the $150 fine. I got in more trouble for stealing a crazy guy's rock than I did for destroying an entire branch of the Navy. Now, SysDef isn't technically gone. They sometimes show up in the world after this, but this is actually worse than if they were just gone. Because now, SysDef ships will attack you even though you don't have a bounty with the Navy. This specific branch has it out for me, but the rest of the government just couldn't care less. It's insane. The second way the ending of this questline drives me crazy is how it affected my relationship with Constellation. You'll recall that I intended to side with Crimson Fleet from the get-go because I wanted to see how Sarah would react to it. Would she kick me out of Constellation for my clearly nefarious deeds? Would she even have a reaction to it? So after I finished the questline, I headed straight for Constellation HQ to have a chat. And oh boy, no one is happy with me. They all clearly expressed their disdain for my actions, and the one thing that really annoyed me is that most of the dialogue is written as if I'm trying to placate them. Many of the lines I can choose are either apologies or defenses for my actions, and this is not at all in line with what I want to say to them. I'm proud of my decision. I gave the Crimson Fleet enough money to expand across the galaxy like never before, and good! Why shouldn't they? I'm role-playing as an asshole that doesn't care about other people. I kill innocent people all the time just so I can level up my concealment skill. I don't care about how many people are going to be hurt by this decision. Where's the option to tell Sarah that she's not the boss of me and I don't care about her opinion on the matter? Is it really role-playing if you're only allowed to play the roles that Bethesda wants you to? Sarah's dialogue is just a mess here too. First of all, the dialogue assumes, once again, that I actually had a choice in whether or not to join Constellation. She acts like it's a privilege that I'm on the verge of losing. Of course, she's not going to kick me out because hello, I'm the main character. I can be the most heinous criminal in the galaxy and they'd still let me in. Sarah is also very inconsistent with her lines. In one breath, she tells me that she's my leader and that I need to listen to what she says.
I'm the chair of Constellation, and if you wish to continue as one of its members, you will answer to me.
Which, first of all, I never accepted you as my leader! Kick me out! I never wanted to be here in the first place! You aren't the boss of me! But then in a later line, she tells me that she's only saying all this because she's my friend and she wants to help guide me in the right direction.
I'm not here to tell you how to run your life. I was simply giving you some guidance from the perspective of a friend.
So which is it? Are you my friend or my boss? Are you mad because I broke the rule or because you care about me as a person? Make up your mind, lady. To the surprise of absolutely no one, you do not get kicked out of Constellation for destroying SysDef and handing the Crimson Fleet a fortune in credits. They have a very high tolerance for crimes, apparently. Finally, there's perhaps the biggest insult of all. After I was done with the Crimson Fleet, I decided it was time for me to help the people and join the UC Vanguard. The Vanguard is a division of the United Colonies Navy that is made up of volunteer ship captains that handle jobs the rest of the Navy is too busy to deal with, I guess. And they just let me join. No problem. The Vanguard commander brought up that I was involved with Crimson Fleet, but
in the Vanguard, we're serious about our take-all-comers policy, regardless of their past.
Are you fucking serious? I destroyed an entire branch of the Navy and you're just gonna say, time to turn over a new leaf. This is ridiculous. I got a high-ranking officer captured and probably killed. This is absurd. Imagine if you walked into a police station and said, "Hi, I'm a serial killer and I'd like to become a police officer," and they just let you join the police academy with no questions asked. Actually, that's a bad example. That probably does happen. In any case, this is part of Bethesda's backward attempt to make sure that every player gets to experience everything they have to offer. Yeah, Todd, you did a really good job making sure everyone would make their own story. A unique experience every time. I'm a big time pirate with the history of betraying the UC Navy, but they're gonna let me join anyway because, hello, I'm the main character. Is it so wrong to lock some players out of some content? Is it so wrong to say, no, you're a pirate, you can't join the Navy. Go start a new character if you want to experience this content. Bethesda. You have an incredible community of players that continue to play your games for years and years after they release. Everyone that I know that has played Skyrim has played it more than once. Are you really so afraid to ask people to start a new playthrough if they want to experience everything? You must be really confident in your ability to make these games if you have no faith that anyone will play it twice. Bottom line, I should not be able to do the UC Vanguard quest line if I've already sided with the Crimson Fleet. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Full stop. Should not be able to do this. It's completely absurd that I can. But since I can, let's go ahead and talk about it. The Vanguard questline is probably the best in the game, including the main story, which is probably why Bethesda was so afraid of keeping you from being able to do it. I started off doing a regular Vanguard job before discovering a very real problem. Terror morphs are giant monsters that pose a massive threat to humankind. They're violent hunters that seem to appear on every planet that humans visit. No one knows where they come from, only that they will show up once the civilization gets large enough. While out on a Vanguard job, I discovered a terramorph on a planet that hasn't seen enough human development to warrant a terramorph's arrival. This is legitimately a cool premise. The most deadly predator in the galaxy is mysteriously tied to the growth of human civilization, and if they start popping up sooner than expected, it could halt the advancement of humanity. If these things kill every settlement before they can grow large enough to defend themselves, then humanity will be unable to expand to new planets. I mean, they already have like a dozen planets, so maybe that's not that bad, but still, it's interesting. In order to address this issue, you work with a former United Colonies scientist who has studied terramorphs. Now, I do have an issue with this. I'm a new Vanguard recruit. Shouldn't dealing with this be passed off to someone much more qualified and higher ranking than me? Well, no, of course not. I'm the main character, you know. In order to tackle this threat, I went before the United Colonies cabinet because we need to access the scientists' old research. The cabinet are the leaders of the United Colonies, and the reason we need to speak to them first is that the research has been sealed as part of a post-war agreement. There are two major factions in the Starfield universe which I've already spoken about quite a bit: the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective. House Faroon is also considered a faction, but they don't have any planets to their name, and basically everyone hates them for being a weird snake cult. At this time, there is peace between the UC and the Freestar Collective, but they were at war not long before the events of the game. When the war eventually came to an end, the two factions came to an agreement. The research and knowledge they had both gained on weapons of mass destruction would be sealed away permanently, only to be unlocked upon the agreement of both parties, plus House Faroon. Additionally, the UC's fleet admiral was executed for war crimes committed under his leadership. The reason we need to speak to the cabinet is that the UC's research into terramorphs was sealed as part of the agreement, so we need the cabinet's permission to get the ball rolling to unseal that information and deal with this deadly threat. We managed to convince them, but they're only one party that needs to agree to it. Now we need the Snakes and the Freestars agreement, and they ask me to act as their representative and work things out. Me, the guy who destroyed Sistef, who's been a member of the Vanguard for about 2 days. They tell me that it has to be me because I am so close to the issue and that they don't have time to catch someone who's more qualified up to speed. I mean, it took me about 2 paragraphs to explain the situation, so it can't be that hard. Not to mention that there's an entire cabinet of career diplomats who are now very caught up on the details, but none of them are the main character, so it's gotta be me. I managed to convince everybody because I'm just so damn charming, and I leave the scientists to do their work. However, before moving forward, I'm asked to meet with someone. They don't tell me who it is, but they make me swear that I won't tell anyone about it. I headed deep into the bowels of New Atlantis, past a very large airlock, and found a man sitting in a large cell. This is the fleet admiral who was meant to be executed at the end of the war. He's been kept alive, but imprisoned for years, just in case the United Colonies needed his expertise. This is actually a surprising and interesting reveal. This is a huge crime. It's insulting to the Freestar Collective. Their entire peace treaty hinges on this guy having been executed, and here he is sitting plain as day. He offers to help me out with completing the scientist's research in the interest of assisting the United Colonies. I accepted his assistance, and as soon as I left, I fully intended to go to the Freestar Collective and tell them about it. They deserve to know about this. But if you've been paying attention, then you know that leaking this information might lead to the storyline playing out differently than it would otherwise, so that's not an option that you have. There is literally nothing stopping me from leaking the best kept secret of the galaxy, other than that Bethesda just won't let me, and that sucks, just completely sucks. Though one person you can tell about it isn't in a position to do anything with that information. After some twists and turns, you eventually discover the source of the problem. Terramorphs are grown-up heat leeches. You wouldn't know this if you haven't played the game, but a heat leech is a very commonly spotted pest throughout this galaxy. They stow away on human starships, which is how they manage to spread everywhere that humans touch. You run into them all the time in this game. This is a really cool reveal. By the time you do this mission, you've probably seen dozens of heat leeches and just stopped thinking about them. They're all over the place. It's no wonder they become terramorphs. It takes them a really long time to grow into a terramorph, which is why nobody ever connected the dots. This also explains why they wouldn't show up until humanity had advanced their civilizations pretty far. Now, as for why they're suddenly appearing much faster than before, it's because someone found a way to force sudden growth out of them. And wouldn't you know it, Mr. War Criminal himself is responsible. He used outside connections to plant terramorphs in various locations so that he could then help to resolve the issue, thus earning a redemption and allowing him to secure a higher position in the UC government. He just didn't count on me finding evidence of his involvement. I stood before the cabinet again to figure out a path forward. The scientists have worked out a way to eliminate the heat leeches and terramorphs by extension. There are two options. We can either spread their only known predator across the galaxy without any certainty about how they'll affect a local ecosystem, or spread a microbe designed to wipe them out, which has a small risk of mutating and becoming a problem for humanity. See, this is actually a decent choice despite how little of a difference it makes because it challenges your morals as a player. Regardless of my choice, the terramorph problem goes away, but it's asking me, as the player, what I think is a greater risk. Interrupting countless ecosystems or the possibility of creating a deadly virus for humanity. I chose the microbe because introducing new species into an ecosystem basically never goes well, and I'd rather humanity suffer the consequences of our own actions rather than plants and animals that had never had a say in the matter. That's how I stand on an issue like that morally, and I appreciate how the game made me stop and consider what I felt was more important. If you don't want to give a choice actual consequences, challenging the player's morals works pretty well too. Lastly, I exposed Mr. War Criminal and he got properly executed this time. At least they told me he did. They don't have a great track record of actually doing that. As I said at the beginning of this section, I believe that this is the best questline in the game. There are still obvious flaws with it, but the story is relatively interesting and engaging, and it asks you to consider your decisions from a moral point of view. The plot twists were interesting and well executed, and the cherry on top is that your actions actually have an effect for once. After this questline, heat leeches largely disappear. Whether it be the microbe or the predator, your plan worked and the heat leeches go extinct. That's legitimately a very cool outcome. That's something that I, as a player, can point to as a result of my work and feel proud of. Lastly, we have the Freestar Rangers. I decided to do this one right after the UC Vanguard because I wanted to see if being a member of the Vanguard would conflict with me joining the Rangers, considering both the Rangers and Vanguard are branches of their faction's government, but no, it doesn't even come up. And they didn't even mention my involvement with the Crimson Fleet this time. At least they have the excuse that they aren't in the UC and might not know about me and my actions, but come on, do a background check, folks. This is the only questline where the things you're doing feel appropriate for your position, at least until the very end. During Ryujin, you sat in on a board meeting and influenced the company's direction despite not being a board member and only working there for like 2 weeks. As a new recruit for the Crimson Fleet, I was tasked with collecting the greatest haul of their existence. And as a voluntary policeman, I became an ambassador tasked with unlocking sealed research and deciding how a major threat should be dealt with. As a Freestar Ranger, you're just doing basic police work when you stumble into a much larger conspiracy, and at that point you're just doing your due diligence and investigating the leads that pop up. It's much more down to earth than every other questline. As I just alluded to, the Freestar Rangers are a police force in the Freestar Collective. Once you join up with them, you're tasked with investigating a farm that is being threatened by some strange men. They want to buy the farm, and if the farmer won't sell it, they're threatening to take it. I discovered they're using a stolen Hope Tech starship. Hope Tech is a starship manufacturer based in the Freestar Collective. I went to meet with Hope Tech's owner, who also happens to be a council member. The council is to the Freestar Collective what the cabinet is to the United Colonies, and the Rangers answer to the council. I went to find out why he never reported the ship as stolen, and he told me,
if word got out, it would do irreparable harm to our image.
Because that's not sus at all. This guy is super obviously corrupt right from the get-go. He's not even trying to hide it.
I'm sure I don't need to remind you of my position on the Council of Governors.
It's laughable how predictable this storyline is right from the beginning. Eventually you find out that the people harassing the farmer are former members of the Freestar militia who feel that they were treated unfairly by the government after the war ended. And they're taking revenge by taking it out on random farmers.
Innocent? Nobody is innocent while they allow corrupt leaders to take control.
You know, Bethesda had the chance to do something very interesting here. They could have made an antagonist with a sympathetic goal. These guys have a real point to make about their treatment at the hands of the Freestar Collective, but the fact that they're taking it out on innocent people places them squarely as the bad guys. It has to be black and white for our puny gamer brains because we simply cannot handle any nuance or subtlety. What they really want is to get back at the council, but they're fine with harassing innocent farmers to achieve that goal. It turns out the person that commissioned them to take over the farm was none other than the councilman himself. Big shocker. They intended to do his dirty work, then expose him for the corrupt bastard he is. I killed all of them, so now it's my job to expose him. Like immediately. Right now. I have to go and confront him instead of going to the marshal, my boss, and filling him in on what I discovered. Instead of following any kind of appropriate procedure, I just have to deal with it myself, despite the fact that I'm not even a fully fledged ranger yet. I'm just a deputy. I tried to go to the marshal and talk to him about it, but of course you cannot bring it up to him or his second in command. So I go to arrest the councilman, but he doesn't go down without a fight, and I end up killing him and his security team. And somehow, the marshal applauds my work on this case. Are you kidding? Because of my vigilante justice, a council member ended up dead instead of facing justice, and several innocent security guards went down with him. This was a totally inappropriate course of action. This should have been brought back to the marshal so he could decide the best next step, or so he could confront the councilman as the highest ranking ranger. This is a total overreach of my power, and they promote me to a full-fledged ranger as thanks. I legitimately wish they told me I fucked up and told me I couldn't become a ranger as a result of my poor decision making. That makes way more sense to me. And this is when a thought dawned on me. And by that, I mean I've been thinking about it the entire time I was playing, but it's convenient to bring it up at this point in the script. Starfield is Fallout. And I don't just mean because the gunplay and crafting are similar. I mean Starfield is literally just Fallout under a different name. So many things make way more sense if you consider that this world is post-apocalypse. There's a side quest where you discover a 200-year-old ship that has been floating through space since before humanity discovered faster than light travel. All of the inhabitants are descendants of the original crew who went out in search of a habitable planet after it became clear Earth wasn't going to last. Yet despite their ship being 200 years old, it feels eerily similar to every other ship in the game. All of the technology is the same, their computers operate on the same operating system, they have crafting benches that look exactly like everywhere else in the world, their airlocks and doors are exactly the same, even their lockers match everywhere else in the galaxy. The only noticeable difference is their unique outfits and their old Earth weapons, which you can find elsewhere in the galaxy. And then it hit me. This is a vault. This is a vault tech vault, and I'm the first person to interact with the vault dweller since it became unsealed after the bombs dropped. Technology hasn't advanced since the bombs dropped, which is why all their technology looks so modern. Why is this vigilante justice fine? Because there's no formal government procedure, just a loosely organized vigilante group enforcing justice. Why are people still passing around glorified scraps of paper to communicate? Because long-range communication got obliterated by the bombs and hasn't fully recovered yet. Why can't you buy gun parts anywhere in the galaxy? Because guns by themselves are a rare and precious commodity and there's no infrastructure to produce additional parts. Terramorphs are death claws, and I have to become an ambassador because there literally isn't anyone else to do the job because the population hasn't recovered and the government is run by just these 5 people. All of the capital cities are tiny because humanity nearly went extinct after the war, and this is considered to be a large population by that standard. The economy is a mess because clean milk and water are just as rare as guns and ammo. It all makes sense now. I mean, it doesn't, it just goes to show how much Starfield's world building sucks, but it sure explains a lot. Humanity hasn't advanced at all in centuries, and that's why everything is so backwards. Bethesda really shot themselves in the foot with this side quest. Why did they even include it? No one was forcing them to. If they wanted to do this, they should have committed to it by designing a ship with noticeably older assets and technology. If you're too lazy for that, then don't put it in the game and give crackpots like me the ammo to make fun of your world building. It's like someone came up with the idea one day at the office and they were like, that's cool, put it in the game, without thinking about the logistics of such a quest. In any case, I'm not a big fan of the Freestar Rangers questline. All told, the faction questlines are pretty bad. Only the UC Vanguard had an interesting story. None of them let you control how the story plays out or make meaningful decisions. They're dressed up like these dynamic experiences where every player is going to go through something different, but it's all smoke and mirrors. And it's just ridiculous that you're allowed to do all of them. Siding with the Crimson Fleet should lock you out of the Vanguard, and doing the Vanguard or Rangers questline should lock you out of the other one, since they're opposing factions. Peaceful or not, that would be infinitely more interesting. There isn't anything inherently wrong with designing a game where every player gets to have the same experience. God of War and Ragnarok are amazing games because they have an amazing story to tell that is going to be the same for every player. The combat is fun as hell because it was designed and fleshed out around the knowledge that every player would need to play it the same way. The problem with this game is that they are trying to trick you into thinking you are having a unique experience instead of dedicating themselves to crafting a really good, really fun, really engaging singular experience. I don't know why Bethesda is scared of making a game like that. It would be far better than this half-baked dynamic RPG experience where you don't have the freedom to roleplay the way you want to, and it isn't actually dynamic at all. The game is written to railroad you down the same path as everyone else while also taking into account the different paths that players might choose. So it can't let you make meaningful decisions, yet it also needs to account for every meaningless decision you make. This leads to writing that is full of holes and fails to build interesting characters for you to interact with because shit, they might be dead depending on your decisions. Can't risk having them too involved with your character lest they become an essential part of the story that you care about. I wish I could say that the main story was any different, but it's the worst example of every issue we've looked at throughout the faction quest lines. So what say we get back to talking about that?
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a comment letting me know what you thought, and maybe leave a like if you're feeling generous. I want to give a massive shout out to all my Patreon subscribers, all of whom make it much easier to make videos like these, and I really appreciate that support. I want to especially thank all of my gamers, Lucy Ray Gear, The Unmatched Power of the Sun, and True, and all of my simps, A Yellow Line, Marzak the Mad, Belgara, Bill Nye the Bounty Guy, David D, Degenerate, Matsugen, Jimmy B, Skippy, Ninja Des, Ramu Nerd, and Ryan Hosford. Thank you all once again for the support. Now, for the all-important question, when is Part 3 coming out? Well, if you are one of the aforementioned Patreon subscribers, you can watch it right now. Patreon members get early access to new videos, and they already have access to Part 3. So head on over. It's just $5 a month if you want to watch it right now, as well as getting a ton of other perks like weekly updates and behind-the-scenes live streams. But if you can't afford the Patreon, Part 3 will be out in 2 weeks, so I'll see you then.